Hey guys, it's Sabrina with Sabrina's Craft-nanigans. You want to see how I turn this? A little rusty old pan and a gingerbread man into something beautiful. Oh, look at that. Oh, if you want to see how we go from this to this, you got to stick around. Bye. See you in the craft room. Okay, guys, here we go. A little bit different of an introduction today, but I hope you are here and you're enjoying what you're gonna see. I can't wait to show you all this goody. So, I, of course, got that little gingerbread man from the Dollar Tree. That old rusty, crusty pan came from my mama. I baked Christmas cookies on that pan, I guarantee you, about 100 million times when I was a little baby. I guarantee. Now, we're going to take Mr. Gingy. You can see I took my heat gun and I popped off all the little extra pieces there and off to the side. And I'm taking some nutmeg brown. And what I did is I watered the wood down and then I just kind of rubbed it, painted, pounced it, and kind of gave it so it's not all the same color brown, but it'd be kind of like a cookie. Now, if you've been around for a while, you see me make that little rolling pin there. And so we want this piece to match the rolling pin. And I also made that little riser. If you missed that, I will pin that down in the comments, maybe if I remember, but it'll for sure be in my description box and at the end. What we're going to do now while Gingy dries, we're going to take our Mod Podge and this same fabric that matches the fabric on the rolling pin. And I am going to Mod Podge all his little extra pieces for her. It's actually going to be a girly. We're going to make her girls. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to Mod Podge the one side and we're just going to stick it to the fabric here. And there was no special technique. I didn't even pay attention to where I stuck those on, where the lines were or nothing. However it came out is how it came out. Yep. Sure did. And then I just cut that piece that I used off and then Mod Podge the other side, like you just saw right there. And we'll let that dry real good. Now, once that was really good and dry, I took a wet wipe and some antique wax. If you hear noise, that's bees and moose rustling through my rummage. Anyway, yes, took the antique wax. Speaking of bees, there he goes. Yeah, and wet wipe antique wax and just kind of rusty mess that all up, just like on the rolling pin. Now, I got a bigger piece. There, you can see after it was all dry, I cut them out, I sanded them, and then I Mod Podged them again. Now, I colored the little buttons in that barn red, but that changes later. Okay, forget it. You didn't see that. Okay, nope, that is not Dawn in that bottle. That is water. But the fact that it sprays the mist, I like it. Anyway, so there's another piece of our fabric, but I already got the antique wax after it with some water and rustied and crustied that up a little bit. And we're going to make her a little skirt. Yes, we are. So, did I measure anything? No, I do it the May way, just like May with Craft Away with May does it. I do it the May way. We don't measure around here. We just, eyeball things and just go for the gusto. So, I decided, we don't want it that long. I want the little feet to show a little bit, of course. So, and when you snip and rip this stuff, there's all sorts of frizzly frazzlies all over, and that is just the way I like it. Now, so we got it long enough, we got it wide enough. I'm just going to start on one side and I'm trying to keep this as smooth as I can on the back because it's going to go up against the cookie pan here in a little while. And I just used my hot glue to glue that to the back. And now what I'm going to do now is make some ruffles. Now I am no good at this. You guys, if you want to know how to put like pleats and ruffles into material the right way, don't watch this video. Go watch somebody else. Yeah. So I'm trying. I've kind of watched like Kathy Joe and some others watch how they make the little pleats, and that is what I'm trying to do right here. So she only gets about 3 or 4 pleats in her little skirt, but they're little. She's not very big. She's pretty skinny. So we got what we got, right? Yep. So I thought it came out pretty good for a first time to try to do little pleats and ruffles. Anyway, you just kind of back and forth it a little bit and glue it on with every little back and forth movement you do. If you want to go to settings, you can slow the video down to see how I did it. But like I said, it's probably not the right way to do it. But she's holding together. All right, so I had extra fabric there because it was better to have too much than not enough. And now I ripped that off because I still wanted that rippy edge, even though the back part's not gonna show. That's Bees that keeps walking back and forth there, by the way. He was all in the business that day, and now he's fixing to get the zoomies and start howling here in a minute, you'll hear. So we glued that on, and I trimmed her up a little bit, and yep, fancied her up. Now, I was gonna glue the buttons on, but I thought, nope, she needs something else. So here's a strip that I had ripped off when I went to make her skirt. It's like a thicker end, like where they had hemmed it. I just folded that in half, and that literally gave me the perfect two size pieces to give her some little straps like what I'm about to do right here. So I don't know where I was because Bees decided to stomp across the computer and stop the recording. And yeah, so anyway, so took that piece that I had, cut it in half, and we're going to make her some little straps. And she didn't have a shirt or nothing, but she's not going to need it. She's not going to be naked, I promise. Okay, so we're going to get her little straps on her little dress here. And I just hot glued the front and then wrapped it around her neck and hot glued it to the back, and it kind of angled right there, and I made sure that was good and tight. And then after I hot glued it, I put a little bit more on top, flattened it out as good as I could, and then snipped off any extra that was going on there. There she is. Now we'll take our two little buttons that I painted in that barn red, but that will change here shortly, and we'll glue those to the bottom of her straps down there. Now we'll get her other little pieces glued on real quick. Whip, whip, bing, bing, dang, dang. And so we glued the bow on there at the top, which covered up the hole. And now we'll glue her little armbands and her little feet bands on. And I just kind of blew through this pretty fast because you see what's going on, right? And I think I glued the little feet bands upside down. But you know what? It's okay. It's all good, right? Now, after I got these glued on, I kind of thought, her bow and the little straps. Oh, there I was telling you, it's probably better to use wood glue instead of the hot glue. But, time is money, money is time. I had to hurry. Okay. So I noticed that like her skirt and the straps were not as dark, grungy as when I did her bow and her little arm and leg bands. So I'm just taking a fan brush and my antique wax and kind of going back over it. I just kind of, brush some on, and then I'm taking a wet wipe and kind of, yeah, just kind of going back over it until I'm happy with it. See, I just put some on, and then I just take my wipey, and yeah. I also think I had sprayed it with the Dawn. Look, not the Dawn, but the water in the Dawn bottle to kind of wetten it. So what I was showing you there, I was on Pinterest, and I noticed that a lot of like the primitive gingerbread men, anything I looked up and Googled as primitive anyway, they came up with just these little bitty eyeballs and some cheeks. There's no mouth or anything. So I'm debating, me, because me with my little faces that I draw with the big old eyes and, the sparkle and the big old mouth and the lips and all that. We all like the little happy faces. So I wanted to do that, but then I want this to be the rusty, crusty, vintage, primitive to go with my rolling pin and the little riser I made. Well, on Pinterest, this is what I found: just circles for the eyeballs and then some cheeks. And then, like, if anything for a mouth, they just drew a line up and down between the eyes. But I didn't like that. But see, here's another picture. It's literally just the eyeballs and the cheek. And that's it. There's no mouth or anything. So I was like, okay, going with it. And now that I'm looking at this, I forgot to do the white squiggly squiggly around her head. You know what? I totally forgot to do that. Oh well. Anyway, I give her a little eyelashes and then a little upper brow up there a little bit. And now I'm going to take my, no, I'm not going to take my, yes, I am going to take my but first, barn red. What am I doing with this? Oh, I'm taking the barn red. Yep. Okay. And it was real watery. That is one reason I don't like it. But I'm going to take one of those little sponge daubers there, like you would distress stuff with, and I'm going to kind of rub that around in there and get quite a bit of it off. And then I'm going to use that to give her some cheekies. So there's her little cheekies. And I wanted it dark, not a bright pink, because remember, we're going for that rustic, primitive vibe going on there. So there we go. And then this is the bees. Bees doesn't show up a lot. You see a flash by, but there's the beesy bug. So, and then I took the white marker to add the dots in her eyes and some on the cheeks. So that gave her a little bit of that whimsy that, that I like. Now, I decided, okay, so yep, she's still looking kind of naked there. So I decided, let's make her a little scarf. So I had that piece already ripped. Now, the fabric that I have left isn't very long anymore. So what I did is I ripped two strips, the snip and rip, and then I glued the ends together. And so that gave me a long piece. And of course, I'll make sure that that part is at the back and then that won't show. Because when I had cut that first piece, no, that was two pieces glued together too. Yep, sure was. So since my fabric wasn't a small width, I had to take two pieces and glue them together. You do what you got to do. And then I'm just going to tie that. And then I noticed that this strip was wide. So I snipped and then I ripped that. So that gave me another little extra band right there. Now I'm going to glue this in a little while, but not right now. I am going to put some glue on the back to make sure that it hangs on there. But what I want to do is we of course got to get some little greenery and foliage in there. So I'm not gluing that knot down quite yet. So of course I got to keep retying and retying and retying, but that's all good. And then I trimmed her up and got some of them little fuzzies off. So this is just some sparkly. I loved that. Where did I get that? Hobby Lobby, that frosted eucalyptus. Oh my gosh, it was beautiful, but it was too big. It was too big on her. So I'm using these little frosted little picks I just had in my stash like forever. And then that clump of berries. Yeah, this was all stuff in the stash. And I'm just kind of doing what they like say the dry fit. I'm kind of seeing where I want it before I officially glue it down. And this is why I did not glue the scarf down just yet because I want to tuck the greenery up underneath her scarf. So once I get it how I like it, I'm now going to use my hot glue and then stuff that greenery up under her little scarf here. And then I put some glue on the scarf knot to keep it glued down. So now we've just got a clump of berries, and this like fit perfect over the hump of the knot of the scarf right there. And I'll just hot glue that down. And there we go. And then I decided, well, this needs something else. So I take one of the strings, because remember, I have an odd number because I made that extra rip. So I took one of them and I tied it in a little bow for 30 minutes, but you're lucky I clipped a lot of that out. Okay, you're lucky I only left in like 3 minutes of it instead of the 30, right? Yeah. See, okay, make the bow, Sabrina. There we go. Isn't that cute? I thought that gave it a little bit more pop, a little bit more pizzazz. And then I started to realize that these others were a little too long, so I just cut those a little bit shorter. And then I'm almost thinking maybe that was too short, but I wanted her button kind of still to show through. But anyway, yep, we'll get back to those buttons here in a minute. Now we're just getting a bunch of the glue webs, the typical, got to get them glue webbies off. Yep. There she is. Isn't she cute? Okay, now it's time to get her to the pan. I cleaned off the pan really good. I'm telling you, I have baked years and years and years and years and years and years of cookies. I am 48 years old and I probably baked cookies on this pan when I was 6. I guarantee you. Okay, so what we're going to do to make sure that she sticks, I'm going to use this Fix All adhesive. It's kind of like an E6000 from the Dollar Tree. And I'm going to mush this all over around the edges, all the way around her. And then you can see I got my big paint bottles over there. Once I get her on, I'm going to put something heavy on her to hold her down. And we're going to let her sit overnight because I knew that the hot glue probably would not do it. So this is how we're rolling. And see, there got her on, and then we're gonna just set these bottles are pretty full bottles. And then there's my Dawn bottle full of water. So here's the next day. She is stuck. I also forgot to give her a coat of Mod Podge, and I made sure to do that too. That way she's good to go and her face doesn't scrape off. Now for the fun part. We're going to make a little swag up in that opposite corner up there. And when I glued her on, I made sure that the hole in the pan on the edge was up at the top. So you could hang it up that way if you wanted to. I just ended up propping it up against the wall. But if you wanted to hang it, you could put some jute twine through that hole at the top and hang it. So yes, I did make sure it went the right way. Now, I have talked and talked and talked and showed you no clue what I was doing. So I had these candy canes that my friend Shelly gave me. They came from Hobby Lobby, but if you were watching, that packaging from Hobby Lobby looked like this Hobby Lobby stuff is probably like 10, 20 years old. I have no idea. I just tried to use some antique wax to distress them a little bit, but that wasn't working. So I took some of that same old extra fabric and we are wrapping it around the candy cane. I just glued it on one end, wrap. And now that I'm here at the other end, we're going to hot glue that end on. So you see, I already did one of them. I got this other one. You saw I got one of them little spoons that came from Hobby Lobby this year from the fall stash. I did just antique wax that, but we're going to add a little bit more pizzazz to that. And then I got a little gingerbread man over there that came from Dollar General, and I tried to make him the same color as she is. And now Gingy's going to hold the spoon. So I'm just kind of getting some little extras here ready. If you like this stuff, use it. If not, don't. Okay, here's where the barn red goes. So I used the barn red to paint the end of the spoon handle, and I really didn't like it. And that's when it clicked to me that I used this lacquer by Waverly to do the rolling pin and the riser. Remember, I'll have that video linked in my description box and it'll pop up in the cards here at the end. Or go to my Christmas playlist. I did it recently, probably about maybe a month ago, maybe. And that's so I'm going to take my paintbrush and then go back to her buttons. Because I like that barn red, but I remembered that this lacquer red color was what I used for the rolling pin and my riser. And I want this all to coordinate and match. Anywho, after that lacquer on the little spoon, and I just did the handle, not the whole thing. Once it was dry, I took my sander after it and we're just kind of grunging it up. See there, just like we did the riser and the rolling pin. You'll notice everything matches. Of course, I forgot to get the riser in the end video there, but go watch my other video if you haven't seen it. All right, so those things are all done, ready to go. Now, we're going to make my bow. I just got a lot of fabric and then I've got a lot of ribbon. The green and this the red that was Hobby Lobby, and then the burlap was Dollar Tree, and then all this fabric is extra fabric that I had. The lace came from Dollar Tree. Got some jute twine. I'm going to squish this all up and I'm going to wrap this jute around it quite a few times just to make a good old knot in the middle and make it that rusty, crusty, primitive look with all of our jute doot doot. And then I'll flip it over and I'll kind of make sure everything is turned the way I want it before I officially tighten this down real good. And now I will just tie myself a double knot right here. Shawbang and shabong. I don't know what to say because I'm actually trying to slow down. I talk too fast for some, I know, and I'm so sorry, but this brain moves fast and this mouth moves fast. And I just, this is what happens when you teach, 6-year-olds all day for 23 years. Or I did teach, 8-year-olds for 10 years too. So anyway, when you teach kids, you kind of, you go fast. Yeah, it is what it is. And I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm dovetailing my ribbons here. And for these bigger ones, what you'll do is I see I'm kind of layering them a little bit so that one is kind of longer than the other. And yep. So that's how that's going. So just to kind of make them all stand out so you could see all of them. Not that you can see all of them anyway by the time I'm done, right? Because I pile so much on. And there is our Merry Christmas ribbon. Oh, you guys know I am fascinated with this. If I go back to Home Goods and I see some more of this, I am snatching every roll of it up. I should have done it to begin with. Anyway, I made sure to just cut off some Merry Christmas there so you could see it. Our little gingerbready will go on top there. You can see I already made him a bow with that ribbon and the jute and then glued that on and glued the spoon to his hand. And I'm just going to glue these two pieces because I didn't want to tie that in there because I'm trying to use as little as possible. So, and I want you to be able to see it. So I just kind of snip those off and I'm going to hot glue those on and Gingy will go in the middle. Back to the pan, okay? So we're going to take this. I decided, okay, I'm not tying this or anything. I'm just going to take this and we're going to pile the hot glue on. Will this work and will this stay? We'll find out at some point, won't we? So we're just going to hold that down. I make sure all my ribbon is where I want them. I kind of smoosh that around in the hot glue. Going to put a big old clamp on it here. And while that clamp is on there and that hot glue is setting up, I'm going to kind of play with it and just kind of decide where I want some of this greenery. I've got some pine. We've got our two candy canes. I've got some more of that green fern foliage looking stuff that we put on her scarf. I'm going to add some of that. No, that is not where I leave those candy canes, I promise. And here's the Gracie Lou going to join us because you see that pine right there? She likes chewing on the pine. You see, I'm trying to keep it away from her, but it ain't working. And I finally just like gave up. Okay. So so we got our bow glued on. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of flip some ribbons around as Gracie eats the rest of my pine. And I am going to glue those up under, not completely behind the ribbon, but about halfway in the middle. We're going to get those glued in there. I'm just dry fitting right now, making sure that's where I want it. I decide, yep, this is where it's going. There's some plastic caps kind of on the end of those branches, so I pop that off. And then I just put a bunch of hot glue in there and stick that in and then flip my ribbons back to make sure everybody is in the right spot. And there we go, and press and hold that down. And now I'll speed through because I do the same thing on the other side. And then I'll really speed through because we're going to add a bunch more, some more pines, some more greenery. And Gracie wants to chew on it. And yeah, I'm going too fast for her. She can't get me. And yet she's just all in the business. So see how I kind of layered the greenery in between the ribbons? Yep, instead of just putting it all behind. Oh, now Moose wants to join in. If y'all haven't seen my little short I posted where my moose took my tree down, y'all need to go see that little short. I posted it last night. Yeah, anyway. Mr. Man got his minute of fame as a YouTube short. Yeah, within an hour and a half, he had over 600 views. I think that's what I'm going to start doing. I'm just going to start posting shorts of the Moose Man. Anyway, took down my tree. I jinxed myself the night before when I told my daughters and my cousin that, oh, my cats don't play in the tree. The very next day, less than 24 hours later, Moose took the tree to the floor and had no remorse. Anyway, you can see what I'm doing here. I glued my candy canes to the back. Now we're getting old Gingy glued on in the middle. I used a clamp because that spoon kept popping off, so I busted out the wood glue, and that clamp is just holding on the spoon there. And there she is. Look, I decided, oh, she needs something on her bow. Her bow looked too plain, so I had a couple pieces of that fern greenery frosted stuff left. So I kind of just pulled that apart. It's so thin and skinny and pliable, and just glued a couple little pieces on our bow. And then I grabbed a couple more berries and stuck that in the middle. So that kind of spruced up her bow and helped it go along with what's on her scarf right there and everything else. So that made her look fantabulous. Yes, it did. So that's what I'm doing right here. And then I started with just one little berry and then decided, we got to have an odd number. Well, of course, one is an odd number, but she needed a little bit more. So I added three little berries right in the middle of her bow there between the foliage, the greenery. Look at that. I was so happy with this. I couldn't believe it. And boy, you talk about a pan that I know is well used. Yes, this is staying with me. This is mine because that's my mama's pan. And there's the rolling pin. In case you guys did not see the rolling pin, I did not put the riser in here with this because I kind of got in a little bit of a hurry. This is only one project tonight, guys. I hope you enjoyed and you liked, and yes, and yes, and yes. I know it's only one, but I tried to slow it down a little bit. And this was a lot of steps to this one. And it took me pretty much all week to get this together when I get home every night. But I had a blast doing it. And it goes with the rolling pin. It goes with my riser. You guys go check that video out if you have not seen it. I will link it in description box. And it'll be here at the end as well. If you feel so obligated, as obligated the right word? I don't know. Obliged to support the Moose Man and my craft habit from him crashing my tree on the floor, you could buy me a coffee. I love y'all so much. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next week. Mwah!